.09 on a Wednesday. Welcome everybody. Brian and I are here today to talk about a little bit of everything. Those of you who are kind enough to take out a look at the articles this morning. One was on ION and the CW and how people a couple years ago were dismissing them, and I put a article up there as to why they shouldn't have, which I tried to explain to them back then, but sometimes you can't get through. And the other is more specific to the Tampa Bay area, where by the end of next week, the stadium deal should be done and ready to rock and roll. So those are the two things out there. And we're going to talk about the CFP. And my friend, I'll turn the mic over to you and let you begin the process.
Ooh, all right, the responsibility. Well,
there you go.
Good to talk to you again this morning, first off.
Always a pleasure.
And, what we've been seeing here, especially since that, that meeting that we'll get back to again here, but the meeting between the networks and the CFP, not just the network, but the networks, I think says a lot. And so kind of leading up to that here to say, there's a lot of debate out there about what expanding the CFP would do. Do you fall in line with folks who think that it'll devalue the regular season, that teams that people perceive as not having a chance to win the title shouldn't be in the tournament at all? So it comes down to, whether people believe that perception should matter in that regard, or whether we should just give those chances based upon, actual results. And if people are right, well, that'll get proven in the results. If they're wrong, well, awesome. Everyone loves an upset. So I'm taking a look at this and watching people kind of out in public make their arguments about why expansion is bad. And you kind of start to wonder why they're doing that and why they're pushing that. And I would like to, with you, just take a logical approach towards the value of that and look at whether there's some truth to that, or whether that's more about perception control. So that's kind of what we're talking today, I think. And like I said, I really also would like to get in with you in regards to what potential real value there was in the meeting of that room with the networks and the CFP. And as you bring up these other networks like ION and
CW.
I think that they could play a part in the future of this as well, because remember, we're probably going to have 2 playoffs, and they're certainly not going to get the whole second one, but I could see them playing some role like in some of the early rounds of it. So we're about to see a lot open up, and to have the first meeting where Fox was in it, I just think it's a lot bigger than what most people are giving it credit for, despite the fact that, like Dellinger and others said there was little to report of it. That just means they didn't change the model yet, but there's no way those people sat down all together and that some serious conversations didn't happen. Would you agree?
I mean, 100%. I think that, sometimes these meetings, and you're sitting there and it's fact finding, right? You just want to see, it's kind of like the state of where are we, right? You go around the room and each person gives a status report on what's going on. Okay. So you glean as much information at that time, and you take the opportunity to do everything you can to drill into this stuff. Okay. You're not going to have any answers. You're just going to have an opportunity to really sit down face to face with these people and say, okay, where are we now? Where are we going to be in the next couple of years? And then what's the long game? And so I think all of that as you just, you just finally articulated, is that what we're looking at right now is the network sitting in with the key players and sitting there and saying, okay, um, game plan this out for me. What's the 12, the 12 team playoff look like? What's the 2014 playoff looks like? What's the keys to all of this? And at that point, we get back to your debate, which is this actually makes the regular season more valuable than people think, because the more opportunities you might have to make the postseason, the better off you are. And that means that each game matters just as much as like each football game. And you have 17 weeks of football, right? And and each week matters because you don't know, regardless of what your record is at the end of the season. You could have a losing record, which we've seen a couple of times, make the playoffs. And we might see that in this case in Major League Baseball. So that doesn't in any way degrade the regular season. As a matter of fact, in the stretch drive, the last 5 or 6 weeks of the season, it can make things even more exciting.
I agree 100%. And as someone who doesn't just necessarily watch the big name games, but sometimes you want to watch for games that have a really interesting matchup. And in the 12-team CFP period of time, which has been a couple years only, we have had so many more of those. Like last year, we had Indiana and Miami in the championship game. That does not happen in the 4-team CFPH. It doesn't.
No, and there's, that's not, those are not the two teams you might have had on your bingo card at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, granted, Signetti may be the greatest college football coach of all time at the end of the time. Like, he hasn't earned that yet.
Right.
But I don't care how good he is. He doesn't get Indiana up and running in the 4-team CFP period of time. You're just not getting the guys there. He brought in his guys, but he's not getting into the 4-team with that first one. And then he follows up the first berth by bringing in guys and having an even better team for the second year. It is entirely due to that access. And then on top of that, with Miami, they weren't even in the 12-team lineup, as they do week by week. Oh, this is who it is, until after the very last week. And they're in the championship game. Like, these things just aren't possible. That made so many more games valid and worthwhile during the season that I don't understand how people can honestly say that the expansion of the CFP devalues the regular season. The same people were saying the same thing when it was announced that this is going to expand. And they're like, teams that shouldn't be there are going to be there. Like, they said the same things, and it was 100% proven false. And now they're saying it again, and I guess we're supposed to take it seriously, Jim.
Okay, well, good luck on that. I just don't see it. I can't see that is, is something where you can sit there and go, well, this makes sense. Well, no, it doesn't make sense. I'm excited because I've got opportunity. Opportunity brings excitement. And I just don't see how that particular situation excites anybody.
And you know what else it does? It makes it really hard to predict. Like, if you're in the prediction business for college football, your job is getting so much harder these past few years.
Yeah.
It is so much more difficult. Transfer portal made it difficult, but teams, like we were saying earlier, they backfill. Like, it doesn't quite affect it as much as people think, but it does affect it. NIL has certainly affected it, but one might argue it's actually gone a little bit more towards like the past, based upon now, they're pushing for these massive amounts of pay that can go out that only certain programs can handle.
Right.
But what's really pushed parity to a degree that I think was not even predictable is the expansion of the CFP, and now it's impossible to predict. I don't see guys coming out with strong predictions of like who's going to win these games and where the rankings are going to be in each conference. Like I think these guys are a little more leery of putting their butts on the line, and I don't blame them. Like that's not a business I'd want to be in right now. This is because parity is, I would say, almost here. We are much closer to it, and if you were to have a 24, just the amount of teams and access and chances to be seen on that stage, it would truly be revolutionary for college football, my belief. And I just don't think that possibility gets said enough. Most people want to kind of call out to the reactive, angry folks. But I don't know why those, like maybe those people only follow programs like Alabama, and they see themselves kind of going down.
Mm-hmm.
Florida's not even in the top 25 at the beginning of the season. That was a first.
Miami was the only one from the state of Florida that was in the first. First.
Yeah. I mean, that's another thing I think. The value of that. I mean, a bunch of those teams who are in there are going to drop out anyways. But even the voters who tend to just want to vote the same all the time and like, oh, these teams have the best rosters, they're going to be there. They're even being forced to change.
Sure.
They get lambasted every year now because half of their top 25 at the start of the season doesn't even stay in it.
Yeah, they're gone now.
So that's just my thoughts on this. Just like, I think it's very important to look at this CFP in that regards.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think people realize we may be on the verge of this really happening soon, because while you're saying they're in the CFP meeting, they're going through, the standard stuff. I think even on top of that, you've got to bring those two powers in the room and get them to the point where they'll even have that discussion that you're talking about, because this is ESPN's territory.
Right. And
you're inviting Fox into the room. That's got to be seen as a threat. We've seen what ESPN, like they gave, Pate a position, but right before getting that announced, he had to put out their thing that they wanted the 20 team, because they wanted it talked about there, but they didn't want to present it. Like there's all these type of machinations going on. So I think that in that room, man, like at least at the start, that had to have been a bit of a tense situation, because it is a complete change on how this is going to work, on how much they're going to have to pay for content. And I think it's great. And I think that despite there being very little said about that meeting, because there's no FOIA, they can talk about whatever they want in there. They can talk about Congress. They can talk about the future. They can look and say, okay, who's going to get what schools? Like there's a lot they could talk about, Jim, that has to get worked out, besides just looking at numbers of like, well, here's viewership numbers and all that. I mean, I think it was much bigger in scope.
Well, again, like we spoke in the pre-show, most of what's done there is kind of like taking the pulse of what's going on. And it's not, as funny as it may sound, I mean, when you're in bidding for something, you're often in the same room with the people that you'd be bidding against.
Yeesh.
It's not comfortable.
I imagine.
Let me give you an example. We when I was with Sunshine Network, we wanted to get a deal done with both Florida State, Florida, Miami, the whole gang, right?
Mhm.
And it just so happened that the Gators were the first one up. At the time, a gentleman by the name of Richard Giannini was handling the broadcast rights for the University of Florida. And this was a regional thing. So, we were not getting the national games. We were getting regional contests and in some cases tape delays of national games. So anyway, we're sitting in there and, Jack Stanfield, who was, my boss, with the excuse me, the Fox Regionals,
Mhm.
and I are sitting on one side of the table. On the other side of the table is a guy by the name of Jeff Genther. Jeff is a really good guy, and a gentleman by the name of Charles Dolan, the late Charles Dolan now, and Chuck Chuck was the creator of HBO, of the USA Network,
Oh,
of Sports Channel America, Sports Channel Regionals, and had no problem spending money. We, on the other hand, did have problems spending a lot of money. And our theory of the case is if we can get two of these three, we'll be in good shape. So when Chuck starts talking to them, to Richard, I kind of leaned over to Jack and said, "You know what?" He goes, "What?" He goes, "We could go to lunch now and it wouldn't make a difference." Because Chuck's going to, you're in a room knowing that Chuck's going to outbid you. There's just no way. If he wants it, he'll get it. We didn't have that luxury. And so when you're in the room, you're gauging, all right, who am I up against?
Mhm.
And then what can I do to tailor my bid to make it look better? Do I need partners? Can I do it alone? All that sort of thing. And I think that's where, you know, being in the room with other people is not uncommon, but it does give you an idea of what you've got to do to get past the other folks that are in the room, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and when you're speaking that, it kind of brought to mind how ESPN has treated TNT
Mm-hmm.
and how much they're giving them this year. They're getting half of the CFP, and
Mm-hmm.
I guess you would have to list them then. I don't know if this carries over to CBS because CBS is with Fox. It's kind of an interesting tug of war there, right? Like who is CBS TNT line up with when the time comes?
Well, ABC's going to have trouble because CBS is going to own TNT.
Right.
So,
But CBS, if they get TNT, now they have that access.
right.
Like, are you going to play friendly with ESPN now? Because now you've got that access there, whereas you're still not quite sure yet what Fox would give you if say the CFP decides to have just those two as the main partners, and then they can do what ESPN is doing.
Yeah, I really think that the upcoming CFP deal is going to be much like the NBA deal, where you're splitting it into 3 or 4 partnerships. It makes the most sense because to get the amount of money that they're going to want, it's going to be a price tag that's going to not necessarily jive with the budgets of 1 or 2 networks, especially when you're cutting back and money's going to be tight. Are will the college football conferences get their cash? Yeah, they'll get a bump, but the CFP's basically sitting out there saying, "Look, we can." They don't have exactly the power of an NFL situation, but if you want if you want a regular season and then you don't get to do the Super Bowl, it kind of cheapens the regular season.
Yeah.
So if I had to guess, and this is all it is right now, is that if those folks who were in that room, right, are working on what do we need to do to make this bid work, they're going to start looking for partners and ways to do this, that so that the CFP will say, okay, every other year, you get the championship game. ESPN, you get it 1 year. Fox, you get it 1 year. CBS, you get it 1 year. Whatever, however that goes, because they're going to have to make the amount of money that the CFP is going to want. They're going to have multiple partners in the deal, and multiple partners is actually good for the CFP. You don't want just to be stuck with that Fox and ESPN.
I would agree, and this is where I think I put this when I talk about like the Big 12 and their future and how being part of the A4, it's gonna give them a bigger seat at this table than people realize. Maybe not in direct pay, but in direct access. And I think that if the subdivision happens, CBS TNT having a direct partnership with the Big 12 is going to give them an extra step up in getting at least that part of the CFP, right? Like when the conference playing stuff and then going forward from there, I think that one at least becomes a Fox, ESPN, CBS, like front runner. I don't know exactly how NBC gets that same status, unless they come in and like say make a deal with ESPN and they become a major partner in broadcasting, like say ACC. That's kind of how I see it. Otherwise, like right now, Fox has control of the postseason for the Big 10. I think Big 12 goes to ESPN. But if they're going to expand the CFP via conference playoff, instead of having conference playoff stuff be directly negotiated between conferences and networks, it's going to go through the CFP. There's still going to have to be some value given to those who have these deals, because tell me if I'm wrong, but I would think that those deals have something in them about if new conference content is created, they get first kind of bid.
You're talking about the people who already are under contract with CFP, right?
Well, contract with the conferences. So say the Big 12 was thinking in the past about creating like a conference playoff.
Right.
And Fox would have had first dealings to bid for that new content. Not that they would necessarily got it, but probably. But if that is now going to be created within the CFB playoff umbrella, I don't know. I don't do this like you do, but I would think that there would still be some type of like kind of legal hurdles.
Well, normally how it works is you have a 90-day re-up window. So you have an exclusive. So let's say, and this is how the Big 12 ended up with the money that was supposedly, Fox and ESPN were dangling for the Pac-12 back in the day. What happens is you have a 90-day exclusive window in which you are the only two, in this case, Fox and ESPN were the only two bidders that could extend the contract. So it's not a new contract, it's an extension of the old contract. Okay. And that actually is an easier thing to do, because obviously all you're doing is tacking on to something you already have. And you're kind of divvying up, okay, so who gets the tier 2 rights, the tier 3 rights, how do we work with that? Who's going to handle the Olympic sports? What goes on with the basketball? Well, that's already been resolved. Okay. And you can tweak that. So if Fox wanted to, a few more football games, or ESPN wanted a few basketball games, you can work that out. So an extension is much more easy to deal with whenever you're in that situation, which is, what the Big 12 found, right? They found out that, okay, we'll take the money, whatever that money is, and we'll run with it, and then we'll worry about the next deal, down the road.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what goes on. You usually get that. Now, your Mark has said that he wants to do two things. One, take them to open market, which means he would then waive, if you will, the 90-day exclusivity of Fox and ESPN and take them to open market, and maybe even, and he hasn't specifically said this, so I'm not going to say that he did, but he's intimated that he may want to split the football and the basketball up. I honestly think that's a mistake, but it's up to Brett. The whole thing is TV networks like packages. They want football, basketball, whatever, all of it there. Okay, they don't like to split that up, and I think that might not, because then you're saying, okay, my football is worth what, but what's my basketball worth? So there is an inherent danger there, but to the point of the CFP, the CFP and conferences, the CFP has a different agreement with the networks than does the conferences. So I truly, if I'm the CFP, I truly don't care about what the conferences have. I care about what we have, meaning the CFP. Who are our present partners? Do we want to work with them long term, or do we want to open this thing up and just see how much cash we can put on the table?
Here's kind of the complication that I see, and why I think especially ESPN and Fox are there. In order to do this, they have to do away with the conference championship games. So there is some form of loss from those deals, which would have to be addressed in some manner. You make good on them in another area. Well, okay, well, as long as they don't press a legal position, it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter if they've lost that in the contract. If they gain something somewhere else and say, as a part of this, we're not going to press that. And that's why I feel like Fox and ESPN are first in the room, because they hold all the rights to the conference championship games.
For now, right? Exactly. But exactly, that's who they have to make good with in order to do that. So to me, that's the step I see when you bring both of them into the room. Is like, oh, they're talking about how to really do this now. Like, this is how we bring the conference championships into the fold, or you get rid of those and turn them into playing games. Is you got to make good with those too. Like, so that's kind of where I'm looking at, even if that's not what they allow media to say. That to me has got to be where they are, because we know they're looking hard at getting rid of those conference championship games and replacing them with playing games that are under the CFP umbrella. Right.
So that to me is where they come in, and that's the step that they're at. That's what's going on, and then you go from there. But to me, that's a pretty exciting stage, and not to give this too much, because I don't know if it's true or not, but there was a report. I'm sure maybe you're listening would have seen this as well, that kind of a soft vote went around on a particular school to a particular conference. And I don't know if that's true or not, but if it is, when you look at the timing, that would definitely suggest that there was some horse trading involved with figuring out what it would take for everyone to be okay with getting rid of the conference championship games and moving to this next stage.
Well, I think that there was probably, and those are the kind of conversations, what if this, what if that, right? What if we get rid of the conference games? What if we are able to procure, this team, that team, and add them to the conference? It's all this kind of, speculation as to what we can and cannot do. I think the other part, though, is that when the CFP is dealing in there, sitting in there. Yeah, they got ESPN and they got Fox in there, but they're gonna find out, okay, what exactly, are we gonna get for this? And if it's horse trading away the conference championship game, so be it. That's not, they can live with that. But just where's the because that they control the conference championship games from a standpoint of doing it. But you have to sell the conferences, frankly. Then at that point, on do we want to do we want to bail on the conference championship game?
Yeah, and everyone has to kind of remember we look at these things in generalized stance, but it's not just the CFP there. It's a president from each conference.
Right.
Their conference commissioners are in that room.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got the two main network partners. There is a lot that can be talked about, and none of it can be FOIA'd.
And Notre Dame.
And Notre Dame. Like the amount of issues that they could work on at that time is what makes it funny to me when, media's like, yeah, not much was come to. I'm like, no, that's just what they told you. Like there's no way at this point in time with everything going on that large group of people, decision makers, all together in one room leads to some serious conversations, some serious horse trading possibilities. And, just maybe the first conversation of many, but from that conversation, you then have to go back to your party, your group, and have conversations saying, hey, they're open to this, they're open to that. What do you think? Talk to your ADs. It starts to get disseminated down through the ranks. So I'm really kind of curious to see what else bubbles up, so to speak. What comes to the surface from other areas that may or may not seem connected, but actually is, because that was one heck of a meeting. It just had to be.
Well, there are a lot of legal pads that were filled up with information on
my God.
At that meeting. Again, like we said at the beginning, it's a fact fighting meeting, but it's also, the trial balloon, right? Well, what if we did this? What if we got rid of the conference championship? What if we added these schools, in the next media deal? What does all this mean? So it's basically you go away from that with I'm not sure that template is the proper word, but guidance, if you will, if nothing else, of where everybody's thinking. And maybe when they went into that room, they weren't thinking about that, but maybe now they are. So it's where things get changed. It's a very high stakes game of horse trading.
Yeah.
What are you willing to give up if I give you this?
Absolutely.
And so, as you said, college presidents who aren't specifically, known for their ability to just sign off on anything.
Yes.
My guess is that they'll go back and they'll sit down with the other college presidents, with the
other conference,
with the other conferences. They may even pick up the phone and call somebody in one of the other conferences and say, okay, did you come out of this with the same idea as I did? So, and I can see, frankly, Jim Phillips and Brett Yormark, because they're the junior members of this this group here with the Big Ten and ASCC, and saying, okay, did we get anything out of this deal, or did we get dominated by the ACC, the Big Ten, and the SEC? And so I think there's a lot that, as you said, a lot that wasn't talked about, but that doesn't mean it. I'm sorry, not a lot said, but there was a lot talked about. And so I think what we'll be seeing, as you said, bubbling up to the surface, we'll start beginning to see what those meetings brought as we continue to plot ourselves along. And there's no doubt, without any question, that you got to believe that some way, shape, or form, um, the college, sports act that's in Congress was had to be a major point of conversation as well.
If I may,
Sure.
just want to say some names. I have them. I have the up in front of me right now. Some names of presidents, chancellors who would have been at that table having that discussion. Number one, Miss Bendavuti from Penn State.
Okay.
Penn State has that direct spot, and others have said it, and I've been pretty strongly saying that they're going to have a big say in the next expansion for reasons that's a whole nother story.
Mm-hmm.
Another one that's there is Miss Betsy Cantwell for Washington State, and I would point to that last name.
There's a senator that
There's
happens
a senator
to
for Washington, same last name. I don't exactly know at this point if they're related. I hazard a guess, but that she is there.
Mm-hmm.
So for any of this discussion, she's there. And Senator Cantwell has been very blatantly talking about Washington State. So you basically have someone in the room there who's probably talking with Senator Cantwell.
Mm-hmm.
On top of that, you have Mr. Lawrence Chovanec for Texas Tech, who is sitting at that table in that conversation. You have Mr. Lee Roberts for North Carolina sitting at that table having that conversation. Some of the other ones too, like, there's the Mississippi State president for SEC. But another interesting look at it is Mr. Michael Fitz for Tulane. It's for the American Conference, but I've been pretty strongly stating, and I think you have as well, that they likely have a spot in the ACC going forward. So any kind of maybe split loyalties there is part of that conversation. And of course, the president of Notre Dame. But it's just a very interesting group of people that while they are going to present their conference's position, that's largely the job of the commissioners, who are also sitting there as part of the management committee.
Right.
But so these presidents, whom first and foremost serve their schools, it's interesting to see that they are the ones who are there to have this conversation. Texas Tech, North Carolina being probably the first one that's going to be leaving the ACC, speaking for that group. Mm-hmm. Penn State was a big say this round and who comes into the Big Ten. Mm-hmm. And then, Ms. Cantwell for Washington State. That's why I say to have those presidents there.
That's a rogues gallery.
I mean, with the commissioners and then Fox and ESPN and whoever the groups they brought in, mm-hmm. There's no way they just talked about the CFP. Do we want to go to 24 or 16? This was a much, much bigger conversation.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of fighting over what they were having for lunch.
There had been a little bit of tension in the room. And that's why I said this is one of those meetings where if you ever wanted to be a fly on the wall, this would have been it. And they gave nothing to the media afterwards. Nothing.
Well, the other thing, too, is, I jokingly talked about the rogues gallery, but the situation that comes to mind here is that you've got all of those people in the room, and I don't know if they could do it, but it's quite possible that they had it with a totally straight table so that they couldn't have any knives in the back as they were speaking. Because we've all known that some of these meetings they've had where Bowlesby sat next to Greg Sankey, and Sankey knew that Oklahoma and Texas were going to. The SEC never mentioned it to Bowlesby, and they're literally sitting next to each other. So
Yeesh.
I'm gonna go with there had to be a great deal of tension in the room.
Oh,
Personally, there had to be a lack of trust of anything
heck
said. You know, it's because you've got Tim Pernetti there, right? And
he would have been there, yeah. Every commissioner.
Tim's there with with Tulane, knowing that Tulane wants out.
Right. And then the ACC
you got Phillips
representative
North
is
Carolina.
Roberts, and they're leaving. So it's like, does Fitz become the representative of the ACC?
Yeah, who is it's like, who are you dealing with here?
Yeah, very, very difficult.
And so there had to be, I'm with you till I'm not situations. And I'm surprised that if things didn't get a little too heated there, that Tim would have grabbed the Tulane president and threw him in the back of a car if things got out of hand. It's it would have been fun just to hang out there for that time, but I do think that, like I said, there were a lot of very a lot of legal pads that were full of information as to what happens next. And I don't know. I mean, I think that the fun part is we will find out, but it's hard to believe that you go into that meeting, come out of that meeting, and how long is it going to take for somebody to crack and mention what happened in that meeting?
Someone who didn't feel like they got respected enough. So,
well, that's where we're going to find out, aren't we?
Yeah, like it might bubble up from, the Sun Belt. It might bubble up because they're there. You can't keep them out.
Nope.
Who you don't really know where that might bubble up from. But I think, and that's why when people say, well, the Big Ten and the SEC decide everything, I'm like, it's much more nuanced than that. Like,
it's not that they don't have a major or even disproportionate amount of a say.
Yeah.
But it's the others who keep them. It's the others that keep them quiet, because if there's something that's said in there that leans heavily to one conference versus another, there's going to be, as we said before, there's going to be knives out in that particular situation. And I'm not sure that Bowlesby and Sankey have ever spoken again since that meeting where they sat next to each other. And of course, at that same meeting, of course, which we didn't know about, Kevin Warren was there and knew that SC and UCLA were out the door.
Yep. Yeah.
So, and shout out to Kevin Warren, because he's now taken a national, he's taken a lot of stuff. He's taken the Big Ten a lot further out than they wanted to be in scope. And now he's doing the same thing in Chicago, where he's taking the Bears out of Chicago and into Indiana. So,
which, interestingly enough,
yeah,
is where the Big Ten headquarters is located.
Yep.
And you wonder how many people in that office might be Bears fans. It's kind of wonder, like,
Well, I mean, the McCluskey family didn't hire Kevin Warren because, he's a warm and fuzzy guy.
No. And from, like, there was an interview just yesterday where AD for Penn State at that time was talking about it. And it's you just over and over get the feeling, as people talk about those times now, as we get farther away from it, that there was not a lot of love for Commissioner Warren.
Oh, that's 100% true.
Right. And so afterwards, is it all just business interest, or is like how much personal is there in this? Like, that's an interesting story. Like, is he is he taking a shot at them by pulling Chicago out of there? Like, mostly not.
No.
But
These are pure business deals.
But yes, but I mean, at the same time, you're taking the Bears away from a lot of its financial and sponsorship base.
It's history.
So it's like, what drives someone to decide to be that leader? Because obviously that's why they grabbed him in the beginning, because that's what they were probably thinking of, like trying to leverage the whole situation to get more money as an ownership group.
Right.
You got to find the guy who's willing to be the one who takes all the shots.
Right. And I can tell you that, speaking to a couple of different people within the hierarchy of the Big Ten, I asked him about, the whole Warren thing, and, adding all the teams that they added from the Pac-12. And both of them brought the analogy along, which I thought was amazing that they both would come to this. They said it's kind of like Brexit, right? It sounded like a good idea at the time, but there's like, what the hell just happened? The day after most of the UK voted for Brexit, the number one searched word in England on Google search was Brexit. It's like, after you vote for it, now you want to find out, what did I just vote for?
Wait, what did we do?
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of where the Big Ten was, not long after Kevin Warren, brought in those 4 teams. Was, wait a minute, I'm not sure this is what we wanted to do, and somebody's gonna have to explain to me what happened. And if you remember, Kevin left that before those teams were even onboarded.
Yeah, and I don't know if you caught the interview at all for the Big Mountain guys, but the former AD for Penn State said that they went around, they only brought in the 3 most tenured ADs to get their opinions on it,
right,
before they did it. And according to her, it was very, like, I would say lukewarm might even be stretching it. Like, it was not overwhelming, like, oh yeah. I mean, it was, a lot of issues were raised. As she says, the ADs are the practitioners, but they're not the decision makers. And next they heard about it, it was passed. So this was largely a presidential push thing. That's what. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, from what I've been told, Warren basically sold this to the networks before he sold it to the presidents. And then he went back to the presidents and said, and you have to understand, the networks don't know this, right? The networks feel, when they're sitting down and talking to
they think he has the mandate.
The commissioner, they figure he's got, he can do it because the presidents are on board. And it was not that way. It was, Kevin had put out these things, and he came back and told all the presidents, look, I got all the major networks are on board with this. And they're like, on board with what? What are they on board with? And he goes, well, of course it's USC, USCLA, and then we picked up Washington and Oregon, and they're kind of like, okay, so again, this was more of a thing that happened in an almost cloak and dagger way, when it did it in an open forum where everybody was constantly aware of what was going on. Because just before, as you remember, just before the PAC was supposed to vote on their deal with Apple, which Apple at that point had said they would be willing to work with, sub-licensed linear contracts out. Washington had made the call to the Big Ten, got the okay from Warren to go ahead and bring Oregon with them, and they were gone, and that killed the conference. And so again, it's really going to be interesting how this all plays out, because there is literally very little trust within the ranks of of these guys anymore, and there's reason for that to be the case.
Yeah, and largely I think that's why a lot hasn't happened in the past. But the interesting aspect about the congressional bill
Mm-hmm.
is that it puts a lot of them on the same side, even if there's still some major differences between them.
Mm-hmm.
It still puts them on the same side because it limits all of them
Mm-hmm.
in terms of the plan, the subdivision split, the expanding the CFP, and all like that, what that's supposed to bring in revenue to help them with this
Mm-hmm.
time and what's coming. So even in their differences, they do have some large overlapping similarities. And
Yeah.
you just kind of got to wonder, like, where did they go first in order to create that commonality, which then can carry you through the differences? And I don't know, when I look at the group of people sitting there, it's just like, oh man, that that could have been a disaster, or
Mm-hmm.
it could have worked through so much, because it's one of those situations where they could really work through a lot of people with that specific
Mm-hmm.
group of representatives. And when you catch wind that maybe, the soft votes went out
Mm-hmm.
on a particular school, well, that tends to mean that there would have been a lot of agreement, if true. Big if.
Yeah. And then,
And
yeah.
yeah.
I was just going to say they have to be careful because there's tampering situations and all kinds of stuff that, I mean,
But if
what,
they're all there,
you're right. The
there's
way
no
that they
tampering.
have to speak to each other, is crazy. And so, yeah, there's a lot of crosstalk, a lot of, here's what we do. I'm sure that, um, the group of six, were not pleased with some of the stuff, but, somebody had asked me about the bill making its way through the Senate. Then if they pass it, it has to go to Congress. Um, and I said maybe a 50% chance, and I'm perhaps being way too optimistic at the 50-50. But the networks would love that deal if that deal ever came about.
Mm,
That's they've got cost certainty.
but it maybe, and I get that from that perspective, but it also, there's a certainty involved that the moves to be made that are going to create so much more revenue, those won't be possible. So it's also very limiting.
Yeah, but I'm not sure it's going to create more revenue.
How, how, how does it not create more revenue if the whole, in my opinion here, the whole concept of the 2014 playoff isn't about where things are now. It's about after the split.
Yeah, I'm that I'll grant you. But what I'm saying is, um, a 24 team big SEC or Big Ten doesn't, if I'm a network, doesn't do me any good.
No, I agree with that. And that's, I've, a lot of people talk 24. I do not. I think 20 is where they were going to
I
go,
yeah, I think I can see 20. I can't
which
see
is which is why they picked 19.
right.
Just like whomever put this together, in
Yeah,
my opinion, their express goal was to stop the subdivision push, and that means it was
right.
probably pretty close, because one of the first things that all the media talked about this was like, this thing was seemingly put together overnight and thrown out there. Like someone caught wind, like this is about to happen,
Yeah.
because that whole 19-5 rule, it stops this.
Mm-hmm.
It stops the subdivision split, and therefore it stops the CFP expansion. It stops Fox getting their hands in there. It stops NBC getting their hands in there. It stops CBS getting their hands in there, because without that expansion, they don't. So I would say that at least a good amount of them probably, while a lot of the bill they might like, those specific portions, which are not being budged on, in my opinion, they're clearly meant to just hold this up.
Well, the
And-
5 year rule that Ashley Moody put a amendment out there saying giving them 180 days
if that passes,
grace period. Yeah, I mean it would be part of the bill. I mean, there's ways to nuance the bill even more. I mean, it's
yeah, but they still have to vote in those amendments. Like
yeah.
they're,
Well, they've got a ways to go without question. Then it goes to the House where who knows what the hell's going to happen. But at least, I understand what you're talking about, the subdivisions and all that. I think that what's what Cantwell, right? Talking about Washington State. There's a lot of people in the House of Representatives who represent those group of 6 schools and all the other schools, and so there's going to be a great deal of pushback, or at least pushing towards something that whether or not they can square it with the Senate when the bill would come back. Let's say it passes with Ashley Moody's amendment in it of 180 days. And it goes to the House and they tweak it up a bit and goes back to the Senate. I mean, we're still talking, if they're lucky, they would get to it November, December. And that's if they actually wanted it. And we don't know if they will. But it's going to be interesting, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think if you're these conferences, if you're the networks, they want either this thing, they want it to go to vote. Yeah. And whether it passes or fails matters less. If it fails, boom, we go. If it passes, it's going to the House where it's likely going to fail. And it's probably not going to get held up there. They'll just put it out and vote on it. Where it's getting held up as in the Senate, and that's where the parties who got this there in the first place. That's where their influence is. And in my opinion, the worst thing that could happen for like the conferences and everyone is this thing just sits there on the table and they just keep coming up with excuses as to why to not have a vote, because then you're left sitting in limbo. Like, what do we do? Do we just go? Do we wait for this? Like, those people who put this together, maybe they wanted to get it passed, or maybe they just want this to sit there in limbo and not be able to move forward, and no one being able to move forward until whatever they want, and then they sort of release the House, so to speak. Because that when it's sitting there on that table and nothing's happening, that's the most dangerous position, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, because what happens is you've got a group of people who are waiting for the other shoe to drop. It's like, okay, if we do this, are we going to get, what's going to happen with that regard? If we make a move, if we invite so-and-so to become part of our organization, extend membership to one of these schools, what's the daisy chain effect on that? And so it kind of freezes everybody in place for a while. So I would agree with on that one for sure.
Yeah. I mean, that's a tough spot to be in, because you really, as much as I would like to say, hey, just take the high ground and defend it, it's taking the high ground against a very potent force. Like, you really don't want Congress coming after you.
No.
And while I still think that they would win that in the courts. That's not the appearance that you want.
No, you don't want a Supreme Court deciding this.
And also, real quick on what I talked about before, I just want to set something straight for listeners. Maria and Betsy Cantwell are not related, according
Okay.
to. Just wanted to say that's not, an improper type of connection then, but nonetheless, they're still likely talking.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Just want to say that's still there, but
at
it's
the
not
level,
a
at the level
familial
that,
relation.
yeah, at the level that President Cantwell is, you know that Senator Cantwell and President Cantwell have at least
Right.
exchanged hellos,
Which is a proper relationship. It's fine.
right? No,
I'm just saying it's not a all in the family.
yeah,
type of
it's
thing.
not somebody, it's not a family business decision here,
Yes.
which is important to note. So yeah, I think that this is one of these things where the nuances get caught up and lost in the headlines of these folks who want to see everything, their teams involved in any of this expansion, conversation. I mean, I even had um, a slight debate with a couple of people who said that, well, if this goes through, then USF would be a cinch to become part of the Big Ten. I'm like, on what planet is that going to happen? It's not on it's not on this planet. That's my school. I love them, but sorry guys, that's even in my most delirious moments, I would never have the expectation that that's where USF's going to land. But everybody's got everybody else moving one way or another, and a lot of this I don't know I mean. A lot of people who say they want to move, the people inside the university don't. So you can, take from that what you will, but
They're the ones that have to do the work.
Yeah, they don't want to do it because they see what. I mean, it's like it's like
Challenges left and right when you do that. Like,
well, I mean, talking to some of the folks at Maryland and Penn State, Rutgers, those guys, they're like, yeah, when we go 3,000 miles for a swim meet, that's and by the way, we sat in the airport missed 5 planes because of the of weather delays. It's really a fun situation. What the hell were they thinking? Because even when Maryland first got into the big, right, there was a lot of fans going, "You're crazy. We're not going to Nebraska to watch a basketball game or a football game. That's great." Yeah, forget it. It's just this is not like the old days when we could get in the car and drive down to Durham and watch them play Duke.
No, and to add to that conversation gets a lot of discussion, and deservingly so. But also, folks need to understand that's the conversation that comes after this gets worked out, because they're set up to deal with it, but they're not going to deal with it first. So once they get, the moneymaker situations arranged, then you can kind of relax a little bit, come back, work, because you've now worked out something together and say, all right, what are we going to do to make sense of this at the Olympic level? Because now that we've got our revenue streams coming in, we need to start finding ways to cut costs.
Right.
And we need to do better for our Olympics. So I think we're going to see something else for them. But at this point in time, we just, we can't say. We don't know. Like, is it going to be some type of like cross-conference scheduling to a much larger degree for those sports? I would hope so. I would hope they would get to a point where, Penn State is traveling to Oregon and Washington and California a lot less, and maybe they're traveling more to play Boston College or some teams in the ACC or even down maybe into the SEC or with the Big 12 up there with West Virginia. Like, find ways to play each other in those sports more often, regionally, locally, and have that even matter. Because all of those sports have postseasons too, conference and non-conference. So, but
you're gonna have to find satellite situations where, you go to, we're talking about the Big Ten now. You go where half the teams go to, say, Ohio State for a multiple event deal where they play. I mean, it happens in baseball down during the spring training time in Arizona and in Florida.
Yep.
A lot of the colleges go down there and they play conference games before they ever go back to campus, because it's warmer and easier to get those games out of the way.
Yep. Yeah. And as I said, I don't have any of those kind of answers. I wouldn't know how to even come up with that analysis and figure that out. But what I do feel pretty strong in saying is that those problems will get worked out, and people are going to continue to bring it up until then, which is fair. But there's just no way that can be the priority right now. Like, you can only bring up so many things to discuss and negotiate on before you overcomplicate things. That's always been the problem with the NCAA. Everyone has their thing that they worry about, and so when you bring them all to the table, like, you just can't deal with it. So that's my opinion. Is like, they got to deal with these important parts first that do the funding, right? Like, that fund all of the rest. Like, that's just the reality of how things work. You got to get the funding right.
But not that, because we're getting close to time.
Sure. Yep.
We need to go, but not that. But do they really? Does all this money that they're trying to get their hands on, does it really trickle down to the Olympics school sports? Because I haven't seen it yet.
I mean, if you're talking about like trickling down in an increasing numbers than what it's been in the past, probably not. But yes, it still pays for it. Like, it's always paid for it.
Well, not always, because
not always, but more so.
It's supposed to, but
like, you see Texas Tech. I mean, they're bringing in $1 million softball players,
right?
So to a degree, at some places, absolutely. Everywhere, I mean, probably not. And I couldn't go over more details than that, but I think schools are going to have to pick and choose that. And when that happens, there's going to be a whole different hierarchy in each of these sports, and that's why they've created like committees for each sport that they're going to have to come up with these concepts and ideas when the time is right. Because, if you really want to have the best teams in the sport play, you're probably going to have some cross-conference play, and you're going to want to have some local regional conference play. And and the best way to get to the point where they're able to cooperate at that level is to first cooperate at this level and create big long-term solutions. So that's my take on it. Is you're going to have a hard time solving the smaller local issues and coming to agreements unless you already have a culture of, okay, now we're cooperating and coming to agreements. So hopefully, that's why I say, hopefully with the situation in Congress, it kind of forces them to work together, because I think the subdivision split's even good for the G6s, as long as they are part of this process, and as long as the networks, have to show that tournament too.
Well, I think and hope that that they will receive network money for the Olympic sports.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, yeah, that's going to be a whole.
I mean, that's one of the things that I think is very underreported. That where's the tier 3 and tier 2 rights go? because right now, um, the and a lot of people don't either want to think about it or know about it, but um, a lot of the every one of the tier 3 sports has to be produced by the schools themselves and then made available to the networks. So if you've got a football, I mean, if you've got a softball game or baseball game or um, volleyball or any of the Olympic sports, that um, that basically has to be paid for and produced on campus by the on-campus production team, which then feeds it to ESPN Plus or the Big Ten Network, the SEC Network, the ACC Network. So they have to have on campus production facilities worthy of actually producing um, network quality events, which I'm not saying is a bad thing because you get an opportunity to get some students involved in it, but at the same time, you know you're overlooking, you're basically giving the production the money that you're getting is burned in production for events that they air not necessarily in prime time for sure.
Mm. Yeah, and that's where other discussions we've had were like the possibility of like an Apple coming in with the ACC or something like
Right.
they might be the type of partner who could come in and maybe make that extra investment in order to get their foot in the door.
Well, and it's where money can be made, but the networks have so many other different things that they have going on. I'll give you an example. The ACC network and the SEC network both last year produced over 900 events. They didn't produce, when I say I'm sorry, aired over 900 events. The SEC and ACC network produced over 900 each, and that was on their dimes.
Yeah, and I mean they have that. The Big Ten has that.
Hmm.
Um,
The Big Ten was the first.
yeah, the Big 12 does not,
Hmm.
so they don't have the cost. They don't have the
Actually, they
game.
have to. The Big 12 has to produce their own content as well.
Right, but it's not going to like a network of the name. It's just going to like
No,
ESPN
it's
Plus.
going to ESPN Plus.
Yeah, and yeah, where that goes in the future. But I think, like you're saying, like the networks, there's that's the area where you're just probably stretching too much. Whereas some of these other, you know, I think that your points on Apple are just spot on in that they could do a lot with that because of their global reach.
Hmm.
You might find some fandom for these in places that you maybe wouldn't have otherwise thought,
Hmm.
and they can do a lot more with it. So we'll have to see. And I do think that they'll be able to find some solutions. I just think that these are people, and they're only going to have so much bandwidth. And right now, I would say the vast majority of that, you know, is in dealing with the congressional situation, the subdivision situation, the CFP situation, like trying to figure out what they're going to do at the Olympics. That day will come. So the sooner we get done with these other issues, the sooner we can get to solving those that are also important, but are not going to make or break the situation at this point. If that makes sense.
Yeah, but I mean, I think what we're going to find out, good, bad, or otherwise, is that the Olympic sports, that the presidents have to sit there and go, okay, I have to take up for the Olympic sports because I'm getting heavy, heat from my
Sure.
alumni base and by,
Absolutely.
and you get this situation where people are going, well, you know, I don't know that Olympic sports are that important. Well, that's okay, but um, Oregon would tell you that their old, a guy who used to run track there by the name of Phil Knight would not have. He didn't play football. Most of these guys who come back to their schools, with the cash, are guys who played some sort of Olympic sport.
100%. And that, like I said, I don't mean to like demean them as important.
No, I don't think you are. I don't think you are.
I do think that they will get to it. They will have to get to it. But even to someone like Phil Knight, they could say, we are going to fix that and solve that. But right now, we're dealing with everything we possibly can. Our hands are as full as they possibly can be. We're dealing with the Senate. We're dealing with Congress. We're dealing with our networks. We're trying to deal with each other. We do have to do something for the G's, even though they may not have the voting power as much there. They can still be a real pain in the butt, especially when you're talking about all of this is happening in meetings that they're part of, and that you at the least need them to stay quiet about. At the least.
Yeah, good luck with that.
It happens by giving them a little something,
if they give them some.
Well, that's what I'm saying is, like, when you're in the room talking to these networks, you have to let them know, like, if we do this second tournament, you have to be part of it. We're not going to just sell you the FAS, the autonomy subdivision schemes, and not bundle it with the FPS. You've been bundling us in the past. Well, now we're going to bundle. You're going to pay for these. Now, maybe we can have some agreements that you could sublease, maybe. But that becomes a negotiation too. How many do you allow them to sublease in order to keep the G's happy so that they don't, blow the whistle? So that's where it's like they may not have voting power, but they have power. And they are going to get some concessions that some people will be like, well, why are we doing this? People won't understand. Like, no one's going to watch that. Yes, they will. I mean, they're going to have their own top 25 rankings. They're going to have their own, all the talk shows are going to talk about them. That's where ESPN comes into play, right? That's where Fox comes into play.
They better.
You also have to ensure that there's a certain amount of talking about that. Or talking heads have to talk about that top 25. They have to talk.
There's got to be some sort of tentpole stuff going on there.
Oh yeah, like the details of which that go on in this negotiation. Most people would just roll their eyes and be like, "Oh my god, I'm checking out."
Yeah,
but that's why I say, like, in those meetings now that they're happening, that's what has to happen. And even though there are people in that room who don't have very much voting power, the fact that those meetings are non-foyable is very powerful, but it also makes you a bit vulnerable to the other people in the room. So you at least got to get them enough to they're like, yeah, we're good. So, like, when you see commissioners of the G's starting to talk about, their own tournament, their own playoffs, it tells me that they've started to been giving something. What that is, I don't know. But
I don't think they're going to know. Yeah, I don't think they're going to know until they figure it out, 100%. Because I don't think they're there yet.
Yeah, and we can pick out some things that should be important to them that they would want to push for. But then there's going to be a whole host of things that they're going to know just from being there that they're pushed for that we'll never know about. So I think that negotiation is happening, and for people who want to finally see something come of this, I think that's probably, it should be pretty exciting.
Yep, it's going to get more interesting before it gets before we ever get to find out exactly what's coming down the road.
Yeah, we'll find out in due time. But like I said, I think there's a lot for people to be excited about.
Yeah,
and there's going to be a lot of talking heads out there, well known, who
don't know anything, but they're going to tell us.
Or they have loyalties, right? Like,
right.
you want opportunities here. You gotta say the right things. I mean, we just saw that, like, folks who had to put out certain things in public before their show would get announced. You know.
Let's see. What does Paul Feinbaum think about that?
Yeah, I mean,
Oops.
And it's just the truth, the facts just fly in the face of what something like. There's almost no shame anymore, Jim.
If ever there was, yes.
Maybe, yeah, and you would be able to say more to that than I can, but I always thought at least there was some shame. But now it's just like, man, if the bosses tell you to say something or do certain talking points, you just got to do it, because if not, you're going to be in that next big cut list from ESPN, which is why they do it in the first place. Like, well, it's always a looming threat that you're going to get fired from there.
Yeah. Yesterday, and I mean, we've gone way over, but this, I think, is just a little bit more that we need to say. Yesterday was a tough day because of the passing of, Bill Rasmussen, who started ESPN, and who was a visionary and a guy who saw something that other people didn't, and the ESPN that Bill started, and the ESPN that Bill wanted to see, it doesn't even resemble the ESPN that we now see. And I think that much like Ted Turner, with what he started with CNN and PBS, everything in that realm got changed, and pretty much everything that Bill started ESPN with got changed too. And I'm not sure that Bill was overly happy about what he saw with ESPN. And I know Ted Turner's not happy with what he sees with CNN, but it's worth, because I saw a lot of people, it's easy to pound on ESPN, and believe me, having been on both sides of that thing of working with them and working against them. It used to be fun, and now it's not fun. I don't, frankly, unless it's a live event, I don't really watch ESPN.
Yeah, it just it just feels like, guys, you have to some degree feel like you have to always say the right thing, otherwise, because they make big points of like stars. I don't know if you call them stars or not, but like their most well-known, some of their most well-known persons, they get fired, and it's kind of like saying, you're all, we could do away with any of you. And there's a constant pressure there on them, and you see them when they do finally get fired and they come out and they do their own thing. It's like they're free. I don't know,
Well, the thing is too, I mean, Pat McAfee and Stephen A. and those guys, their shows aren't even owned by ESPN. So, ESPN they're basically in a production agreement with, those guys, and those are the guys who, basically run the show.
Because Pat still does it from Indianapolis, right?
I'm sorry?
Pat still does his show from Indianapolis. They didn't move to Connecticut.
No, he's not moving anywhere.
Yeah.
Stephen A. does his show from New York.
Yep. He wasn't going to Connecticut.
I mean, he'll go up there if they force him to do stuff. So yeah, I think that.
I think he goes up there for someone like.
Well, yeah, I mean,
he's now on First Take again, right?
Yeah. So I mean, sure, of course, they do some stuff.
But they film that in New York, so
yeah,
that's not at their main location where they do a lot of the, the sports center. Like they have their little outlets for some of these guys, like him, who does, so. Yeah,
and then they've actually, to be honest, they've got a huge studio setup, which the SEC and the ACC use in Charlotte. They have
Yeah.
and frankly, CBS and NBC's moved um, most of their stuff to Stamford, Connecticut.
Really?
So it's costs a lot of money to do stuff in New York.
Yeah.
And so they're getting away from it as best they can. But anyway, I just wanted to say something nice. I thought hopefully nice about Bill Rasmussen, um, who created something that
Well,
is
that's fair
is
enough.
on in his own mind was something that he thought would be very cool, and it's still here, and that's good. But it's just different from what Bill had envisioned.
Yeah, and I have a lot of fond memories of ESPN, everything on there, and I couldn't begin to illustrate or talk about how different it is now and what the differences are and what the similarities are. But yeah, it just feels a lot different now the way it's run. Good, bad, whatever, different economic situations, whatnot. But yeah, it's a little more, it's a lot more controlling now in terms of.
Well, they've gone to social. They live and die on social media.
Yeah. I mean, that's the world now.
Yep. And so, with that cheery end to our time, we'd like to thank everybody who joined us, and of course, you're welcome, my friend, anytime you want to drop by. And,
well, I love dropping by and talking to you about this. You're always able to carry the conversation and add so much more to it that it never gets old. So, and we always end up going over.
And we always, I always enjoy it because I always learn stuff from you, and we have fun banting back and forth with it and playing what if games. So there's nothing wrong with playing what if games. So anyway, we hope that you guys enjoyed as much as we did, and we'll see you again tomorrow. So take care of yourselves. Okay, take care. Bye.